Welcome to this week's episode of Thursday Thoughts. I'm Gareth and I'm here with my co-host Amy.
Hey, nice to be together again.
So this weekend marked 3 years of Free Church and just an incredible celebration that we had on Sunday with our friends Craig and Andy Clark from Urban Life Church joining us, and just so many people there. I don't know if it was the free pizza that everyone had.
Free food is always a win.
Free food is always a win. And just a lot of visitors, baby dedications as well.
Yeah, very special moment always.
But just thinking back on the last 3 years and seeing how many people have been added to the Free Church story. I mean, we were talking about this over the last couple of days when we began. About 100 of us came from Urban Life Church. Some others joined in the beginning. So the first few weeks, there were about 150 people, adults and kids, everyone counted in together. And this Sunday just gone was close to, I think, 720 people in 3 years. So just incredible, not exponential, but like growth each year.
Yeah.
It's just people finding their place in the story of what God is doing in the city is absolutely amazing.
And it's always so important to take note of these things, to recognize what God is doing.
Yeah.
But it's not about the 700 or it's not about the number, but it's about actually when you say that number, I see faces and people and stories and families and children and people finding community and all the backstories to all those numbers. And it's such a delight to be able to do this and see that God is adding to his family, that he's bringing people in, that he's restoring people, that people are finding hope, they're finding a place to belong. It's incredible.
And I think numbers tell a story, right? They're not the story, but they give some indication of something that's happening. So healthy things grow, but unhealthy things can also grow. So
like mold.
Like mold, yes.
Yeah.
So it's important to, I think, hear the stories of transformation that's happening in people's lives, because that's when healthy growth is happening. But at the same time, just seeing people being drawn into something where it seems to be God is doing something. And we feel like he's been speaking. We've shared before here on Thursday Thoughts out of Isaiah 61 verse 4, those three words, which are
restore, renew, and rebuild.
Yeah, so restore, renew, rebuild, like that's something of the vision that we see for the future.
Yeah.
And then Craig came in and we just said to him, hey, come and share a message, something that's on your heart.
We didn't know what he was going to
say. And the message that he shared really, I think, spoke into that or resonated with some of what we've been feeling in the story as well, about people that are broken, being able to find a place. God is close to the broken. People bring their brokenness and being weaved or built together into a story, which is just incredible. So I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but one of the things that happens as the church community begins to grow is, and this is maybe just for me personally, but it becomes difficult to keep track of who is who, right?
Yeah.
Like when the community is small, you kind of know everyone, you know their stories and who their kids are and that. Now it's getting to the point where people are arriving, like, I don't know who all these people are. And
which I don't like.
I don't like that, right? So there's almost this tension. Like, yes, we want to see the gospel advance, but at the same time maintain relationships.
Yes.
And I think the soul for this, that God's plan for this, is that every person in the story is part of the church with a capital C.
Yes.
In other words, it's not just up to the people who lead the church to be the primary pastors in the church, right?
Yes.
But everyone has a role to play in terms of connecting, building relationships, helping people find their place in the story, being disciples who make disciples. I mean, could you imagine if this whole thing was just up to you and me to be like the ones who are the disciples who make disciples?
No, I think we would stuff it up royally.
Yeah,
really.
We would become the limit and the lid.
Yep.
But as there are more disciples who make disciples, life group leaders and serve team leaders and others finding their place in the story, and there's activation and a missional edge to this, so growth can continue to happen. So it doesn't rely on just one person.
If you look at the life of Jesus and how he had these 12 disciples, and then there were more, and there were 120, and it grew. But Jesus kept the 12 that were his close companions, the people that he invested in. And even of the 12, there were 3 that he even pulled out of those 12 to be as closest. So if Jesus is our model of what the human, a human can manage.
And it's Jesus, right? So he has
fully God, fully man.
The capacity.
Yes.
Like the ideal.
Yeah. And he had the 3 closest, and then the 12, and then the 120, and then he preached to thousands.
Yeah.
we also can model off that. So that's where I think life groups become so crucial, because
Absolutely.
if you could say, hey, what if I got 12 people around my table every week? And then those are the people that are fully known, fully loved. You know each other's stories. You know about each other's kids.
Yeah.
You know about each other's prayer requests. You know everything about those people.
Yeah.
And then
There's like strong,
Yeah.
close relationships.
there's
there,
all
right?
these
Yeah.
pockets of 12s
So
all across the city.
I think really what we're getting to is as Free Church continues to grow by the grace of God, there's something of a, like we need to manage some expectations here within the community and going like, hey, we would love to know everybody.
Yeah.
Would love to.
Yeah.
But there's just like we are limited in our capacity to know everyone's name and story, and somehow we got to be okay with that.
And the best we can do is make sure that each individual person is known by somebody.
Yeah, which is why, like you've said already, but why things like life groups, where there are smaller groups within a bigger community, are so integral. It's like the pastoral net of the community. So this is perhaps a call to those of you that are in life groups that are listening to begin asking the question, like, what is God saying to you about planting up or starting a life group? Because currently most of our life groups are full, they're at capacity. There's a bunch of people coming into the story going, hey, we'd love to be part of life groups. And what do? Well, the best thing to do is take people that are in life groups already, who have a sense of the culture and the heart behind it, to go, hey, maybe it's time for me to start a group.
Yeah.
And remember when we were kicked out of a group.
We were kicked out. That is true.
Like
we still love the people that kicked us out.
You just had James. James was a new addition to our family.
Yeah, James was
we
tiny.
would go to life group and just kind of collapse on the couch.
I was
new
exhausted.
Parents and exhausted and all of that. And group leaders at the time, after a while, a little bit of grace from them, and they're like, all right, it's time for you guys to go and start your own group. And it was like pushed out of the nest.
And a beautiful story. So in that life group, it was us and a bunch of other people, and then the other people that were in the group that were kicked out at the same time as us.
Maybe we should reframe it. Maybe
No,
kicked out
I like it.
You like
No,
it?
I like
Okay.
it because
I think we're going to hear stories now. People are going to like email Amy
like-
at Free Church are like, I've been kicked out of my group because of you.
yeah, but this is a beautiful story. So us and Peter and Shireen were kicked out of the same life group at the same time 14 years ago.
Wow.
And Peter and Shireen and their kids are still in our community. We're still doing life together.
Yeah.
We're still
Peter was still worshiping on stage.
on stage.
on
Us
Sunday,
and
14 years
Shireen
on,
is on the prayer team. She leads a prayer meeting every week.
at her house. Yeah.
They still in a life group.
Love
I wished their daughter happy birthday on Sunday, and
Yeah,
she
so
turned 20.
She was also on stage. So Peter and Lucetti both on stage.
Yeah. And so
worshiping is amazing.
being kicked out was not the worst thing that happened, and we're
Hugely-
still friends with the people that kicked us out.
Yeah, so hugely uncomfortable at the
Yes.
time, but in hindsight, so Craig said something on Sunday. He said, you walk forward looking back and seeing what God has done.
Yeah.
So you connect the dots. So in the moment, like, I don't know if I can lead a life group. I don't know if I have capacity. I don't have the skill, the ability, but you take the step in faith when others see something in you and they call out like, hey, we think that you've got something in you.
Yeah.
You've got an ability to open your home, have people around your table and host.
And the key to me is that actually I think that we have remained, those relationships have remained
Yeah.
and maybe even grown by not being in the same group. So even the people that were in the group that kicked us out, Peter and Jenny, we're still friends with them. We didn't stop being friends. This is, there's always room in our hearts, but God has done something in us, and He's done
Yeah.
something through us, and we've had multiple different people through our life group in different seasons, and I think the greatest thing is to say, hey, we're on the same team, and we're still going to be friends. We can still hang out on weekends. We can still do bras. But I see that there's lonely people that coming into church on Sunday that don't have a place to belong.
Yeah.
So what if our group that has 12 people in it, 6 go this way and 6 go that way, and we invite more into each of those, and then
Brilliant.
we do that again and
what do you
again
think-
and again.
What do you think about this line? Okay, so we want to forge long-term relationships, not long-term groups.
Very good.
Okay, so the goal of this, why do we want to do this? Long-term relationships should be forged. How are they forged? They're forged in a group. Does that mean a group needs to be long-term? I don't think so. Because if the heart is multiplication, I mean, think about this, right? You have a whole lot of people in the church that are part of life groups and a whole lot that are not. And the existing life groups are full. And then we've said this before, like, I'm not ready to lead a group.
Yeah.
I don't have what it takes. I haven't got time to lead a group and all those kind of things. So then what do? Well, then you take people who've never been in a group before to lead groups, who take people who've never been in groups to be under the leadership of people who've never led groups. And I think it's not a good way.
It can get a little bit messy.
So the best way is to take people that are in groups, that have the heart of groups, to start more groups, and take people who aren't in groups and get into those groups and form long-term relationships, but not long-term groups.
Yeah, and if you think of the Great Commission, Jesus says, go and make disciples. And he didn't say that to a specific group of people. He says it to everybody.
He said to those who were doubting and those who believed.
Those that thought they didn't have what it takes to lead a life group.
Yeah.
And he says, go and make disciples.
He said, go and make disciples. So there's a missional component. Like do something.
Yeah.
Right? Don't just be, but go and do something. So a missional component. Make disciples is the process of formation. Teaching them to obey all that I've commanded you.
Yeah, opening the
baptizing
Bible.
them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And behold, I'm with you until the end of the age.
Yeah.
So in that Great Commission that we call it, there's something of a missional element. Go. There's discipleship, formation. And there's also something of the presence of God. Like his promise is the King of the universe, I will be with you.
Yeah. And that's what makes...
On condition, if you could say, that if you're going and making disciples on mission, like, I'll be with you. So the presence of God, something of that is linked to when you're involved in disciple making and going, the presence of God is going to be there.
Yeah, and that's the difference between life group and joining a running club or joining a Pilates class, where you can feel like you belong.
So unpack that a bit more. Like, what's the difference?
The presence of God.
Okay,
So
being
sitting
part
around-
of a running club is going to form you into something.
Yeah, and that you can find community, you can find joy, you can find shared experience, you can find all of those things there. And maybe even you can find mission, because maybe while you run, you choose to pick up litter. I don't know. But when you are on mission towards Jesus with others, bringing them in discipleship, and you gather as a life group around a table, you're eating together, you have community, you have discipleship, the presence of God comes, and that's where you're going to be transformed.
So it's this idea of gathering around tables over food, so that slows you down. So it removes the rush of life. And then keeping Jesus at the center of conversation. So there's something of creating a space for the presence of God. It's like your dining room tables become almost divine in that moment. Let's gather, Jesus at the center of conversation, and let's talk about what's really going on. And we know, right, that formation happens best in community where there's no rush.
Yeah.
So life groups is not just it's not a social club.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a point. It's a practice of formation to help us become more like Jesus.
And when we're looking at things through the lens of renew, rebuild, restore, life groups is going to become crucial to that, because imagine somebody that's never walked with Jesus. They need to be in a space where their mindsets can be renewed to what does it mean to walk with Jesus. Some of their fragmented parts of their lives need to be restored. Maybe they need to be restored into relationship with family members, or actually restored into relationship with what does it look like to walk in relationship with God.
Yeah.
So there's restoring, renewing, and then a rebuilding of my life on the principles of the gospel.
And that's absolutely key, is a rebuilding. So it's a renewal of mindsets and a rebuilding of life. And as that's happening, you're being restored into your true identity.
Yeah.
And I mean, some of the conversations that we have in group are around really like fundamental, important things, but like the foundational things, rebuilding upon like practices of reading the Bible and how to do that, and creating margin in your life and space that you're not rushed and under the hammer of culture and expectations the whole time. Is how do we actually live this life out to become more like Jesus?
Yeah.
And those conversations happen slowly and over time, but that's a process of formation, right? I sometimes wish that you give your life to Jesus, and he just in a
Easy
moment,
peasy.
like, he deals with all your sin and all your negative thought patterns and all the habits that you don't like about yourself. But that's not the way that God works.
No.
That can, for me, can be like deeply frustrating.
But it's so crucial that we do that, because otherwise, what would be the point of life? If we just, I'll surrender everything to Jesus, and then I'm going to live in this like airy-fairy bubble where I haven't had to wrestle, I haven't had to come up with conviction, I don't have any purpose anymore, because all my problems went away when I came to Jesus, so I might as well just go to heaven now. Actually...
And there's a prevailing worldview there, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, we often talk, like in moments like basics, we talk about this, is many people have ingrained, because we learn it from a young age, that you live this life as best as you can. At the end of this life, there'll be some kind of decision. And if you've done things well, you go to the good place. And if you've done things badly, well, sorry for you, you go to the bad place.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, well, let's just get this life over with so that we can get to the good place. And hopefully I've done enough to get there, right? And that's ingrained in many belief systems.
Yeah.
Not Christianity alone, but in many. But actually the story of the gospel has place of rebuilding, restoration, renewal. So in that first worldview that I just spoke about, there's no place for renewal, rebuilding, or restoration. What's the point?
Yeah.
Because
what
you're
is
just
the point
waiting
of life?
for this life to be done so you can go to heaven.
And in the beginning, when God created, he created man with purpose. So even now, when we get saved, it's not so that we can go to heaven. We get saved so that we can be renewed and restored to the purpose that God has put in it. And what is the purpose? To reach other people and be renewed, be restored, and to reach other people.
Yeah, so it's this idea that you're not waiting to go to heaven, but partnering together in the service of God to bring heaven here now.
Yeah.
So that's the idea behind renewing mindsets, restoring people to true identity, because who you are in God is the most important thing about you.
Yeah.
Not your job title or not how you choose to describe yourself, but who God says you are, your true identity.
Yeah.
And rebuilding, right? A rebuilding of the ancient ruins, of rebuilding the foundations of life. Why do we do that? Because we're partnering with God to see the kingdom advance, heaven coming here, transformation in lives, families, in the city, in this moment now.
Yeah, and God's really been speaking to me in the last few months even about what it looks like when we bring all our brokenness to him, and what in my individual brokenness and your individual brokenness may look different. And so often in our culture, it's, well, I'll just deal with me and mine, and I'll just, sort myself out. I'm not going to share. I'm not going to open up. And it's too painful to actually talk about that thing. And God's been showing me this image of when we bring all our broken pieces to him, and he is able to restore them. And the image is of a stained glass window where he puts all the shards of broken glass together into one picture, and that picture is the church. It's the picture of his grace and his goodness and his rebuilding, renewing, restoring of us as the people of God to bring his kingdom down to earth. And it's really captivated my heart, and we've been singing that song, God, you're restoring the ancient ruins, because I believe it's a prophetic picture of what God is wanting to do in Free Church. And maybe he's doing that across the globe. And Craig coming in to preach the message that he preached, I believe that God is up to something.
Yeah.
And he's wanting us to be renewed. He's wanting us to be restored. He's wanting us to come and rebuild the way things were meant to be. And we can choose to align with that, and not disqualify ourselves because of our brokenness, but actually bring our brokenness as a sacrifice and allow him to rebuild it into something beautiful.
Yeah, I love what Craig said on Sunday around that. Is your brokenness is not a barrier to God, but actually it's a bridge.
Yes.
So at the point where you realize, like, oh my goodness, there's broken pieces. I got brokenness. And the place where God weaves that together, the masterpiece of Ephesians 2:10, is the local church.
Yeah.
You come into that place and you find your place, and you're built into a story of something beautiful that God is creating.
Yeah. So in the second service on Sunday, I mentioned the story of the decor that we created or hadn't put together.
You're talking about the backdrop that Theo built in record time, like his steel work, just amazing. If you need, shout out to Theo.
Shout out to Theo.
A quick name drop, Theo, steel work. If you need anything done, call Theo.
So I mentioned in the second service how we'd had an altercation around getting that, because
I don't think you said altercation. I think you said fight.
Okay. I'm trying to be gentler with my words, you know.
I'm pretty sure that you said to the church fight, which is good, right?
We did.
We also got brokenness.
Yes.
You said. Let me try and think. You said Gareth and I had a fight and I won. I think that's what I heard you say. Was that it?
I don't know if I said I won. Okay. Anyway, the point of the fight was that I had seen a picture of what I believed God was wanting to do, and I wanted to display that in a creative way so that people, when they come into the building, something could resonate with them. And we had misunderstood each other on where we were going and how to to put it together.
Which is often the root of many like conflicts and disagreements, right? There's unmet expectations because things are not communicated clearly.
Yeah.
So there's no clarity on different pages.
Yeah. So we had miscommunicated, and it came to Monday night, and we had to have kind of a robust discussion, and we came to a place of unity, and then reached out to Theo, which was very late notice, and he was able to build this thing for us. And then you said something on Sunday, which I think is so helpful in light of us having this argument. What was the line that you used?
So I think this is just practical life advice, right? Is always fight for unity. Don't fight to be right. So think about that for a moment. Often in arguments or disagreements, people are fighting to be right. Mm-hmm. I'm right, you're wrong. Mm-hmm. I told you so. And that kind of conflict is unhealthy. But if you can fight, or if there's conflict, so that you get to the point of unity, Psalm 133 says, when there's unity, God's blessing is commanded. So you fight, you navigate through conflict to find unity. And go, okay, now we're on the same page. It wasn't easy to get here, but where there's unity, there's blessing. So fight for unity, don't fight to be right.
Yeah, I think it's so good and so valuable, and we should always be keeping it in our minds. So just to clarify, I didn't feel like I was fighting with you. I was fighting for something.
Yeah, fighting for a bigger story,
yes.
right? Actually, there's something here. God is doing something, speaking. Yes. So let's fight for unity so we can all move in the same direction.
Yeah. And then, it was just so beautiful for me when Craig came and spoke about brokenness and how God is close to the brokenhearted. And there behind him, there's all these pieces and I thought, sometimes we have to fight for the word of God. Sometimes we have to fight for what we believe that God is saying and doing. And we fight through it, and we fight to get on the same page, and we fight for unity and all those things. But the fight even is for those people that came in and saw that picture and didn't understand any of the back story and any of the complexities, but so can find themselves in that broken background and go, oh, I can belong here.
Yeah.
And so the message is, don't fight each other, fight for unity, but also fight for God's ways and God's preferred future and what God is saying. Fight for that thing, because I think that when we are able to fight for that, to stand up for what we believe in, to call the future that we see God calling us into the present, there's something powerful.
Sing, like Craig said Sunday, you sing it before you see it. Yeah. So how do we prophetically sing the future that we see before we actually see it in reality now?
Yeah.
So, and these three words are framing for us out of Isaiah 61 verse 4, is the future we see is something of rebuilding. It's of restoration, people into true identity, freedom, purpose. It's a future of renewal. So renewal of mindsets, renewal of the city. There's something of a revitalization, of a restoration, a rebuilding. So that's the future that we see.
It's almost exponential, where it's the rebuilding, renewing, restoring of the individual, of the corporate, the church, and then of the city and of the nation. It kind of grows and flourishes.
Yeah, beautiful. So I asked you to, because you're really good at this, is something of seeing a vision, putting words to it. So just to take some of what Craig said, some of the things we heard him say coming in as the apostolic voice into the story, which is always helpful for bringing an outside perspective. Yeah. Because when you're in the week to week, sometimes you miss what God is doing. Then someone comes in from the outside and goes like, hey, I just want to encourage you guys. And one of the pictures he felt it and he shared, he said, when you have a pot of popcorn on the stove and you put the lid on and it starts popping, and then eventually it starts to push the lid over, and then the lid gets pushed off and there's just more popcorn coming out. He said, like, this is the picture of Free Church. What's coming is this, just it's a continued growth. It's going to push it, like the lid's going to come off at some point. So taking this, how do we capture it, and how do we paint a picture of the vision? So vision really is this. Is a great definition of vision. A vision is a picture of a future that's worth building. Beautiful. Vision is a picture of a future that's actually worth going after and worth building, that we can give ourselves to. So you put some words down. This is a draft, so something's going to help and shape us.
Will change a bit.
So go for it.
When I close my eyes and open my heart, I see a church alive with possibilities. I see a church that knows how to be a beacon of light to a lost and lonely world. I see people of hope that no building can contain. I see a church so inspired by and in love with the life and legacy of Jesus that they are able to bring all their broken bits to Him because they know He restores their souls. I see a resilient church called to push back the darkness and as they invite God's kingdom to come nearer. I see an intentional church, people who sit in the presence of God to be restored through relationship with Him into healing, wholeness, and purpose. I see a church on mission to call those people who see themselves as beyond healing into God's redemptive plan for them, to walk beyond their brokenness into wholeness. I see a wholehearted community who through their connection to the one true vine are able to renew their minds, find refreshing for their souls, and are restored to purpose. I see a committed church called to rebuild the ancient ruins, a people who, like Nehemiah, say, I'm doing a great work and I can't come down. I see a church with a vision to inspire people to follow Jesus and restore them to true identity, freedom, and purpose. I see Free Church.